Senator Kramer, thank you for your question, which is well taken and applies to the issue that I rose about the increased floor of junior ROTC units, for which there are 300 applications and only 15 have been created in response to a statute passed by the Congress and signed by the President of the United States. Senator Kaine, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Congratulations on your nomination. Thanks to all my colleagues who offered thoughts about the crash, the three soldiers from Belvoir. We don't have their identities yet, but that is something I know the Army family feels and this region feels. All my colleagues do, actually, because all my colleagues have staffers who work in this area, and we're all kind of awaiting with dread the manifest and the passenger list of those who died. Here's a topic that this committee has really grappled with, and I will say that none of us are happy with it in a bipartisan basis, and that is the efforts of our DOD to figure out strategies to counter UAS incursions into our bases. A well-publicized one occurred at the Langley base in Hampton, Virginia, but there have been other sightings. New Jersey and other bases have been subject to these. Langley is an example. The incursions occurred over a period of 17 days in December of 2023, and we're 14 months later, and we still have not been given good answers about what in fact happened. And I think we're really frustrated by this, because if it was just a one-day thing, well, maybe you couldn't track it, couldn't figure it out. But if it happened for 17 days and we still don't have answers, that's problematic. And the reason I raise this with you, Mr. Driscoll, is that the Army has been tasked with being the DOD's executive agent on this topic. All the stakeholders are at the table, but the Army is tasked with being the lead in countering small UASs. The Army is charged with leading and directing relevant doctrine, requirements, materiel, training standards, and capabilities to establish joint solutions, not just Army solutions, but joint solutions for addressing current and future emerging small UAS threats. Should you be confirmed, what will you do to ensure coordination between the services in developing a joint counter small UAS doctrine?
Senator, I think these drone incursions highlight a kind of a core problem with how we have thought of our nation's defense. We haven't thought about it in a while. And if you, I got to speak with your colleague kind of in depth about this specific incursion, and it seems to be the buck falls between a lot of different agencies, and no one is empowered to act quickly. And that is at scale, even when it continues to show up day after day, night after night. And I think a lot of the first steps are building a network of communication and identifying an SOP for how do you engage with these things, who owns what, who's calling, and what is a acceptable time frame for this kind of communication to occur. That would just be the people side of the thing. And then from a technology side, I think if you look at a lot of the tools like directed energy, we need to empower our agencies to protect our homeland from these types of incursions so that we can shoot them down and learn from specifically who sent it, what was it doing, what was it collecting. My understanding of this situation in particular is we just don't know, and that's not good enough for the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. I know that Senator Fisher asked you some questions about recruiting when I was at another hearing, but I want to come back to it. I'm on the Health, Educational, Labor, Pension Committee, too, so workforce issues, economy-wide in the military, in the civilian space are very important to me. What innovative approaches have you either seen in the Army, or do you foresee trying so that we can have the size of the force that we need to defend this country?
Senator, from what I've heard of the Future Soldier program out of Fort Jackson, which is actually where I did basic training, it's working really well. It's helping future soldiers prep for the ASVAB, which in and of itself might have some complications of how valuable is a test when you're preparing everybody for it. But the fitness side of things is obviously helping. Those soldiers are doing really well in basic training. Those are the types of solutions that I think are going well. If you look at things like waivers, I mentioned to your colleague, I think we need to relook at the waiver process. Currently, the physicians in charge of giving waivers, their incentive structure, as I understand it, is they are punished when somebody they waive doesn't make it to basic training, but there's no feedback loop to reward them for somebody that needed a waiver, that got through basic training. And so I think we need to start to look at things like that. which could have some pretty meaningful impacts on the pipeline.
Finally, one last question. At his confirmation hearing before us 8 years ago, former SecDef General Mattis noted, and I quote, "If you don't fund the State Department fully, then I need to buy more ammunition." He was talking about the fact that you need a whole-of-government approach to promote national security. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Unequivocally.
That's why I'm really, really troubled by the Trump order pausing all foreign assistance. I think when an order goes out pausing a foreign assistance to other nations, except for arms transfers to Israel and Egypt, China and our adversaries hear that and they rub their hands together, and because they're not pausing, and they look at us pausing as an opening for them to build deeper and deeper ties into the hearts and minds of nations that should be our allies. I'm glad you agree with what General Mattis said, and I hope we might move forward in budgets and in policy to express that as a bipartisan priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Senator Kaine, do you